afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining this webinar this afternoon, where we're going to be talking about baseline progress, which is due to be released on the 3rd of May, and we're also going to give a short recap on baseline. We think that most people joining us this afternoon will have used baseline, but it's always worth just refreshing our memories.
Yes, we've got a short video, in fact, showing just a little bit about the making the connection between the two, the synchronization process,
yes.
And but only a couple of screens, and then we'll get straight into the kind of content that's within baseline progress.
Okay, so let's just start by a quick recap on baseline. As you all know or remember, baseline is a very focused assessment to be used with 4 and 5-year-olds when they come into school, and the idea is that it is administered during the first half term of school. It has a section for literacy, language and communication, and within that there are measures of phoneme awareness and also expression and comprehension. And those last sections are taken from Wellcome, which many of you will know. It's a really popular language screening kit for early years children. Then the mathematics section, as you would expect, mostly number items with some shape space and measures. And Phil, would you like to say something about the data that comes out of baseline?
Yeah, I think that just a couple of things in particular about the standardized age score. First, we're very keen that people understand that it is a standardized score, but it is a standardized age score. This allows us to be quite specific in making comparisons between individuals of a very similar age. When we're talking about children who are 4, possibly, and within that year group, they may very well be almost a full year apart in terms of their chronological age. And when you're 4, 1 year is 25% of your entire life. It's very important that we make those comparisons, I think, as you said about the assessment, more focused for particular age groups. More generally about terms of standardized scores, it allows us to, with the baseline progress, which we'll be having much more detail on in a minute, it allows us to look at that, getting meaningful data on what is quite hard sometimes to quantify that progress through this year. From baseline to baseline progress, the use of these standardized age scores allows us to make that meaningful measurement of progress.
And just finally to add, the reports for baseline include the group report and then dedicated reports, one for the teacher, one for the parent, and both of those feature narrative reports for the teacher about next steps, for the parent about how the child can be supported from home and how they can work with the school to achieve the best outcomes. So now turning to baseline progress. So the idea of baseline progress is that many children during their first year in school make really excellent progress, and we wanted to offer something that was additional to baseline and would enable teachers to measure that progress. So the idea is that during the final term of that year, ideally the second half term, the baseline progress is administered. The literacy aspect comprises letter sounds and word reading. And in mathematics, we still have quite a good number of questions around number, but we have more space, shape and measures questions as well.
Just to reiterate that it is that standardized age score, that common framework for the data, that is also the common language in making meaningful comparisons between individuals' performance and individuals' performance from one assessment to another, and in this case from baseline itself to baseline progress. The thing I didn't mention last time, which I think is pretty important, is that because we can get standardized age scores from this, we can also start to plug those in, as it were, into our progress series assessments, and then it isn't a single discrete assessment. It actually feeds through to a longitudinal look at a student's performance going forward.
That's a good point. And just finally there, the reports, for baseline progress we have a single report which is available in PDF and Excel, and that is a group report, and we'll be looking at that a little bit later on. So again, 2 tablets are required, one for the pupil and one for the teacher. All questions are supported by audio. The teacher controls the pace of the administration, which is through swiping the screen, and because the tablets are synchronized, the teacher swipes and the pupil's screen moves on as well. And the questions are a mix of touch screen responses and questions where the teacher has to mark the oral response. We're recommending that baseline progress is administered in 2 sessions. It could be done in a single session if a student is really enjoying it and doing well. 20 to 25 minutes in total.
Yeah, for both
sessions. So we think probably 10 and 15.
Yeah, I think that would probably be reasonable to have it in 2 sessions. I know 25 minutes doesn't sound long to us, perhaps, but again, we're talking about very young children.
Yeah. And as with all our digital assessments, once the group has been assessed, you can run the report instantly.
If you just bear with us why I changed to a video that we've captured of the setting up of the assessment and some of the content. We'll be controlling that to some extent as well by pausing through, but I do want to remind you that it may seem quite quick in the video, but you control the pace of the administration in the actual assessment. What we've got on the screen now is a representation of the 2 tablets. Sue's reiterated that this is still the 2 tablet delivery. For the sake of this presentation, the left-hand tablet there is going to be the one that we're going to log on as the pupil, and the right-hand one is the one we're going to log on as a teacher. Now, there are a number of app icons here. We're just going through the final stages in the tidying up of this. So when you see it, there won't be quite as many apps to cause you perhaps some confusion. But we wanted to bring to you the details of baseline progress as soon as we could, because we know you're interested to find out what's coming along. So I'm just going to start the video running for a while, and we will pause at various points. So, this is what you'll be familiar with if you've been running baseline already. These names are set up within the test-wise, and we can see on both tablets a list of the pupils that are allocated for this particular administration of baseline progress. Top of the left-hand tablet, you can see candidate register on the teachers. Just below that, you can see the left-hand side, log in as pupil, and it shows pupil on both, but we're going to log in on the right-hand side now as a teacher, and we're going to choose one of those students, and I think in this case it's Mark Harrison. So we've chosen Mark Harrison on both tablets. You can see that the pupil one actually has gone straight through to the assessments, the literacy and the mathematics sections, and they're both showing as available to use. Right-hand side, we've gone to a password. That's because we've set up here the teacher with requiring a password, but the pupil not. You can set up the requirement that the pupil has a password. Perhaps it adds a little bit of complication to the administration, but it's entirely up to you. Okay, so shall we run it again?
Yeah, that's great. Now we're selecting literacy, and the content is being downloaded. Takes just a couple of seconds. Wait a minute. And I'm just going to pause here because it's really important that baseline and baseline progress are administered on 2 tablets. And the best way to do that is by synchronizing the tablets. So you'll see the number on the right-hand screen. That has to be typed into the box on the pupil's tablet, at which point you would press connect, and that would then synchronize the tablets. Now, for most of our schools, this was very straightforward, but for some where Wi-Fi was particularly weak or inconsistent, they may have had problems at this point and could not synchronize the tablets. We've tried to make a fallback situation for that, and you can see here on both tablets we have a button with manual mode. What you should do is, if you fail to synchronize, select manual mode on both tablets, and that will load the content onto both tablets. The only difference between synchronization is that in manual mode, the teacher will need to swipe the pupil's screen as well. Everything else works as if it was synchronized.
Yes, and you'll still be using both tablets, one for the pupil and one for yourself, but you will have to manually move them.
That's right. Please do not administer either baseline or baseline progress on a single device, because that would mean that the pupil will be able to see the icons for the audio, they will be able to see the name of the pupil, and they will be able to see the
recording of the answer.
Yeah, that's the real problem.
Yes,
that, I think, has to be avoided at all costs.
Yes.
So let's just run on and watch the synchronization. And it's at this point that this can be used as a holding screen. So it may be ideal when you're waiting for the child to arrive. You can use that last screen that we saw as a holding screen, get that far, and then the child arrives for the assessment. Now, as Phil said, this is almost the final version, but not quite. So this is the first literacy assessment for letter sounds. There is some introductory audio, and then we move into some practice questions which have a mortarboard icon in the top left.
It's the same sort of methodology as in baseline.
And then we will move through into some real items, just to give you a flavour. So we're going to let that play on now.
So there's the mortarboard. That's a practice question.
Yes. You've got the audio to support that. Again, that's not quite final.
And same as within baseline, all those extra details are only shown on the teacher's ad, so mortarboards, buttons for the question itself. Yes.
So we've got some diagraphs within this. And here we are, this is a real item with the correct and incorrect on the teacher's tablet.
And I don't think that it would be good for the pupil to see that and it being recorded.
Another item. And I think there are 16 or 17 of those.
Which we've got very short.
Yes, you can cut it very short. So here we're moving into the word reading. Again, there's some introductory audio. We have an example or two. And then we're into the first real item. I'm just going to pause it there. And what we've done with this is we have not included audio for the real items. Our assumption is that children will just see the word, read the word, and you move on, which I think is a fair example, rather than giving them the same prompt over and over again.
Yes.
So here we are, we send the results back once we've finished the literacy section. And it's at this point that if you want to take a break, you log out, and then you can come back, and when you come back and log in as that student, you will see this screen.
Yes, and it's kept all of the details, and you'll just be starting at the appropriate place.
So we have to synchronize again.
Yep.
So we're downloading, yes. Here we go with the synchronization.
And the same's true here, though. If there was a problem, then you could run
go
it
into
in
manual
manual
mode,
mode.
absolutely. Holding screen, should you wish to use it.
Yeah.
Again, now we've got some audio here. Will we be able to put here?
Questions. There are different questions, so let's try the first one. How many hooks are there on this rack?
Well done, Susan. I think you got that one right.
Are jumping in the playground.
This is one
Show
of
me the girl who is jumping the highest.
those touchscreen, and you can see that their answer is mirrored on your teacher's hand if it's synchronized.
Some of these T-shirts have more than 5 dots. Show me T-shirt. More than 5 dots. Look at the fruit on the plate. Count the cherries.
That's an oral response.
So that's just to give you a flavour of what the items look like. We're sending the results back. And this shows you that this particular student has now completed.
Successfully carried out both sections there, and those results are stored away. Okay. So that should be where we left off, Sue?
I think so. So we've just got a couple of slides here with samples from our reports. We do have a really nice brochure that you can access to our website, and we've got a link at the end that will show you how to do that. So as you can see here, this looks very similar to baseline. We've got the T-score, which we've decided to retain, the overall standard age score, the overall score with the confidence bands around that score, the overall stay 9, national percentile rank and group rank. And then we have those data for literacy and mathematics, and we've just circled Anna's stay 9 score because we can see immediately that there's a discrepancy between her performance in literacy and her performance in mathematics.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's exactly what I wanted, just to make that point. If you looked at Connor, who is the student just immediately above Anna, they also have a very similar standardised A score, overall of 105. Yet if you looked at the literacy stay 9s and standardised age scores, you'd see they're actually performing in those sections very differently to Anna. So it really does help us to drill down further, because literacy and the numeracy, we would expect that there could be differences there.
Yes, and also the final column which shows you the progress, that is based on the overall standard age score. So with a student like Anna, it would be really interesting to look back at her individual baseline scores and see what, because she's made expected progress, but that may be evened out in terms of the overall score, and in fact she may have made spectacular progress.
Yeah, and there'd be no reason you couldn't access that information.
No, you just go back to your own report, and that's that.
Yeah.
Very quickly, just to show you one of the types of analysis we do, and that's looking at the distribution of scores against the national benchmark. And those of you familiar with baseline reports will know that this kind of representation is used for the analysis throughout the report. So this is the link to the page on our website where you can click through to the sample reports. And I would just draw your attention there to the narrative which we have included in the group report. Rather than offering a teacher narrative and a parent narrative, we've included some narrative and some guidance around progress in terms of what things should be considered if a child has made less than ideal progress, more than or average progress. And then on our website the same area, once we've launched baseline progress, you will find some guidance on feeding back to parents. So we haven't done an individual report. We've taken it to that group level. An individual narrative. We've taken it to group level, and then rather than a parent report, we've got some guidance on.
Yeah, but I'm really glad that narrative is still there, because we've had some excellent feedback on the narrative from baseline. And I think, yes, I know I've been the one to talk about standardised age scores and their importance and in comparison, but also that narrative that actually gave, hints and tips has been very well received, and it is much more child-centric in a way.
Definitely. Yeah. And something we wanted to convey in terms of the narrative was that we are measuring progress from baseline to baseline progress, and that's just one aspect of how the children have developed through the year, and it's just one way of measuring that progress. And to put it in context, a lot of the questioning is around what other things have been occurring for this child, how has their emotional development been, how, all of those things.
That's always been our philosophy, is that we've tried to create something that is a tool for a specific thing, and then that fits within a broader aspect, and things that you will know best. You will know how that individual motivations of student and their individual circumstances. We as a publishing company can try and make sure that we produce rigorous and useful assessments, but they work with you in terms of getting that whole picture, if you like, of a pupil's performance and progress.
A few questions in an earlier session, and one of those was about using baseline progress with children who perhaps were not in the class at the beginning of the year, so they hadn't actually been administered baseline. And we have made this end-of-year assessment suitable as a standalone, but what you will see is you will see that table for those children, if you're using it as a standalone, obviously without that progress measure on the far right. And what you won't see is the narrative we've just described, because that is focusing on progress. So of course, yes, you can include children at the end of year and use it as a standalone assessment.
Did you say anything about how they might use it to link in with progress?
Yes, that's worth highlighting. We've done a big study around baseline and baseline progress. So our original sample of children, which numbered about 1,800, of those, about 1,300 were reassessed with baseline progress, and at the same time, about 650 children were administered progress test in English 5 and progress test in Maths 5. So that means that we can measure from baseline to baseline progress and from baseline to the English and Maths 5.
And then once they're in the system, as it were, from Progress Test 5, we can always look at progress from year to year.
Starting with baseline. And we're not reporting that formally at the moment, but there will be guidance on the website again in that baseline, area. So just finally, wherever you are in the world, you can contact us. Some information there either by phone or by email. And there's a lot of information on the website. We will be hosting the guidance document in this area, in this baseline area, that will give you full instructions on administering baseline. Questions? I'll just thank everybody for attending this afternoon. Please do take a note of those email addresses and get in touch if you need more information. I'll say goodbye for now.
Yes, otherwise thank you very much.